my channel. I'm Iman Monet. Thank you so much for joining me again as I do another video talking about my depression and my anxiety. We are at the point where I am just now leaving the psych ward. It is Friday, May the 3rd of 2019, and my dad has just picked me up from the psych ward and I'm on my way back home. I've finally been released from the hospital, and this is basically my first time leaving the hospital on my way back home. I started the medication probably like that Wednesday or that Thursday. They started me on Wellbutrin. So I was taking this antidepressant. This was my first time ever taking an antidepressant. So I was taking this antidepressant, and this was probably about my second or third day on the antidepressant, but I was only taking like half of the dosage. I wasn't taking the full dosage. Of course, they start you on a small dosage and you work your way up. So I was on really like starting off about taking like half the dosage at that time. And that Friday, I just remember finally getting home, and I was so excited to finally be back at my own house, not being in the hospital anymore. After being in the hospital for about a week, I was just so happy to be back home. So literally as soon as I got home, the first thing I did was took like a hot shower. I took a hot shower. I got in the shower. I was so happy to finally get in my shower, use my own products, cleaning products, like my own shower gel, my own toothbrush, my own toothpaste, everything. I just took a long, probably 35-minute shower. So that was like the first thing I did when I got home. I was so happy to be back home. And so again, like I told you, whenever you're in the ward, in order for you to be released, you have to have like a follow-up plan of what you're going to do after you leave. And I remember while I was still in the program, they were trying to figure out, you know, what my next steps would be. And they were putting the option of me going to like a house, basically going to a house for me to stay overnight to get even more care once I leave the hospital. And I remember them throwing that option out, like, to go away to stay in a house with other people that, you know, have different mental disorders and things like that. And I remember them throwing that out as an option to my parents, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. I need to go back home. I need to sleep in my own bed at night, and that's pretty much, I'm not doing this overnight thing anymore. And so we crossed that out, and then we end up talking about an IOP program. And IOP is an intensive outpatient program. So we talked about IOP, and then we talked about PHP, which is a partial hospitalization program. And so there was one of those programs at Baptist, the hospital that I was in. And so they did offer that as an option. So I ended up doing the PHP program. So I had like a my first consultation, I guess my consult for meeting the director of the program and meeting the therapist of that program and things like that. And so I met with her, and she was the therapist, and so I met with her, and I remember just meeting her that day. And, you know, of course she's gonna ask, you know, how can I help you? Why are you needing to be in this program? What's been going on? So here is probably about my 6th or 7th time talking about how I overdosed, talking about the depression that I've had, talking about my anxiety. It's probably about the 5th or 6th time of talking about that and things like that with the therapist. And I was explaining to her, you know, basically why I needed to be in the program and, you know, the things that I go through. So I'm talking to the therapist, and she's asking me questions like that, and basically doing like an intake, trying to figure out if I'll qualify to be in this particular program, because it was a small, kind of like a small group, so it was only a certain amount of people that can be in it. And so after I got through the speaking with her, and I told her about how I overdosed and everything like that. I tried my hardest not to cry in there, but she just kept asking me different questions, and I got so emotional. I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, I know she's about to say I can be in this program or whatever, or I'm gonna have to do this program. And so it was 2 different things. It was the IOP, which was the intensive outpatient program, and then there was the PHP, which is like an even more strenuous part of the program, which is the partial hospitalization program. So with IOP, you would be there from about 9 o'clock to about 12 to 12:30. But with the PHP program, you were there from 9 a.m. to about 3 in the afternoon. So you're basically there all day. And the idea behind it is partial hospitalization. So you would go into this program from the morning until somewhere in the afternoon to basically keep you occupied, to keep you not thinking about, being depressed, not thinking about suicide, things like that. Basically keep you under basically being watched. And so how I was in the psych ward in the unit there, it's basically like the same thing, except for you don't stay there all day. You get to go back home and go to your own bed at night and then come early in the morning to do it again for the next day. So I did the PHP program from May the 13th up until about May the 24th. So that was 2 weeks. I did 2 weeks of that program. That's what she stated. That's basically the max. So I did the complete max of that program was 2 weeks. So they initially told me going in that I would probably do about five days. But once I talked to the therapist and everything, she was basically like, you need to be in here for the max time in the PHP program for 2 weeks. So I did the whole 2 weeks of that program. You guys, at the time of me doing the program, I was still very emotional. I was still very suicidal. I was still very depressed during this program. I still was going through a lot of things at this time. Like, I was not completely healed from, being hospitalized for a week. I was still going through a lot of different symptoms, feeling a lot of different emotions that I didn't really know how to deal with. And also I had just started my antidepressant. One of the side effects of that antidepressant was insomnia. So I did not, majority of the time that I was doing that program, I was not getting any sleep. Even though I was back at my own house and back in my own home and able to sleep here at night, I was still not getting a lot of sleep. I was having a lot of insomnia and up a lot, majority of the night, and not being able to sleep at night. And so that was one of the side effects of the medication. In another video, I'll get more into all the different side effects that I experienced with that medication and basically my experiences with the antidepressants. But that was one of the things that I dealt with when I started on that Wellbutrin. So explaining the PHP program. So I got there. It's basically like a small group. It's like group therapy. So it's basically group therapy. You come in there early in the morning. You have a therapist that comes and she talks to you about different patterns of thinking, different cognitive behavioral therapies, how to change your thinking to positive thinking, different things like that. It's group therapy, so there's other people in here that may also have depression, that may also have anxiety. There's people in there that had substance abuse issues. There are people in there that had OCD. It was a lot of different people. The group was probably about, it was like 10 to 12 people. You have the option to go or not go. If you miss more than 2 days, you're basically out of the program. So if you don't show up for more than 2 days, they'll basically take you out of the program and bring someone else in, because again, it's a small group. So there's a lot of, there's a long list of people that are trying to get to this program for this therapy. Now, this was basically like the turning point of me finally figuring out what's going on, what has been going on with me for the last 3 years. I learned a lot of knowledge in this. This is where I really felt like I needed this. While I was in the psych, while I was in the unit, I really didn't feel like I needed to be there. I didn't feel like I was really gaining anything from it besides, I really didn't feel like I was gaining anything from it. When I went to the PHP program, that's when I started to realize that these things that I'm learning about, it's like I'm starting to get light bulbs. Like, wow, yes, I've experienced that. Wow, yes, I felt that emotion. Wow, yes, I feel like that's me. I started to learn all those different coping mechanisms and different ways of thinking and how to correct my thinking and basically really what's going on, because I never knew about depression. I never knew about anxiety. This was not something that was taught to me ever before. So this is my first time experiencing it, my first time doing therapy, my first time on antidepressants. So I'm really soaking in up all this knowledge, and I really could go on for days about all the things that I've learned in that program. I remember one of the things, the most important thing that I learned, was mindfulness. We talked about mindfulness and how to live in the present. We talked about how things in the past are normally connected with things of like shame or things of like regret, and how things in the future can sometimes be connected to things such as like worry, anxiety, stress, or a lot of what ifs of thinking about the future. And we talked about how with mindfulness, you are living currently in the present. You're able to slow your thinking. You're able to think about now, so you don't stress yourself out thinking about what could happen, or you don't get upset with yourself about what has happened in the past. Just living in the moment. I remember that was a big topic through the PHP program, and that was like a life changer for me, because I did deal a lot with anxiety trying to figure out, post grad life, what am I doing after I graduate? What is my next career step? When am I gonna, get a house? When am I gonna get married? And things like that. I thought about that a lot, and it began to stress me out and give me a lot of anxiety. So just that mindfulness and living in the present was something that was very influential to me at that time. Inflexibility can lead to depression if your plan is only allowing a way to succeed in your future. So that's just basically saying that inflexibility, if you only have one plan, if you only have plan A, you don't have a plan B, you don't have a plan C, you only have one way to succeed. The inflexibility with that plan A, if it doesn't work out, that could lead to depression, that could lead to anxiety, because you only think of it one way. That's a small tunnel vision. That's like looking at your life through a tunnel. And anybody knows that your life is so much bigger than that tunnel. There's so many more things that could happen that could ruin plan A, or things that you just are not prepared for, that are just unexpected. And that's just life. So that was a big thing that I learned while I was in that PHP program. Another thing that I learned, there was the psychiatrist there and the therapist. So the psychiatrist was there to basically manage our meds, and any medications that she felt like we needed. She was able to prescribe them, or basically give us more insight about the medications. With me, this being my first time ever dealing with depression or having to take antidepressants, I got a lot of knowledge from her as well, the nurse practitioner that was able to prescribe me and talk to me about the Wellbutrin that I was taking. We learned about neurotransmitters and about the chemical imbalance that we have in our brain to make us think in these certain ways, about the serotonin, dopamine, histamine, things like that, all of those different neurotransmitters in our brain, the chemical imbalance. It's one thing where depression is like different, because there's one thing where you can, break an arm and you can take a CAT scan and you can see that you're fractured, that your arm is broken. With depression, you can take a CAT scan of your brain. Yes, you'll be able to see your brain, but when you're dealing with depression, you're not talking about just your brain. And when you're talking about anxiety, you're not just talking about your brain. You're really talking about your mind. And when you're talking about your mind, there's not a scan that you can just go and see what's going on inside your mind. Only way that therapists and psychiatrists can know what's going on inside of your mind is by what you speak, what you say. And so it's a different thing when there's all these different antidepressants. One thing may work for you, another antidepressant may not work for you. It's just really trying to figure out what that imbalance is, what those neurons that are not transmitting correctly, how to make that connection and how to bring that back to a correct and equal balance. So it was just so many things that I learned through this PHP program. I felt like it was so necessary, that partial hospitalization. I also just remember while I was going through that program, just all the different emotions that I was going through. I was still very much suicidal. Once I left those programs, I remember sometimes I would leave at the end of the day and I would just sit in my car and just be so overwhelmed, like, how did I get to this point? And then also just still feeling that little bit of hope, like, I'm here now. Like, I'm here. I got to stick with this program so that I can get back better. I can get better and that I can get back to my normal life. At the time, I still didn't feel like the antidepressant. I was still taking, a very small dosage. I had not gone completely onto a full dosage. So I was still not really getting the benefits of those antidepressants. So I was still very much depressed, very much suicidal, and just kind of dealing with everything with that. The program ended on May the 24th, and that was a Friday. I also know my parents had to go. They were going out of town. They had this plan for almost a year to go out of town on May 24th for a surprise birthday party for one of my dad's friends, 50th birthday party. So that was May 24th, and my parents did not feel comfortable with leaving me and going out of town. So they arranged basically for me to stay at either my aunt's house, my grandmother's house, or a friend's house, basically, so that I could be watched. Because, you know, at this time, everybody's still pretty shocked of what happened. It's kind of uneasy about, you know, I overdosed. So they just want to make sure that I'm safe and that they're not going out of town and leaving me unattended. So they left for the weekend, the 24th, that Friday through ever. I think they came back on Sunday or Monday they came back. And I remember them just saying, like, you know, you're going to have to stay at someone's house. You can't stay here alone. And I just remember being so upset. I was so upset. I was so frustrated. I was so I just couldn't understand why, like, I understood why they wanted to do it. Like, it makes sense. I get it. They didn't want me to be left unattended with, you know, my thoughts and everything that I have going on. Like, what if I try to, you know, take my life again while they're out of town and, you know, they can't get to me? So, like, I understood. But it was just like, I had just been in the hospital. Like, I was just happy to be back home. Like, I did not want to stay at someone else's house. I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I'm still dealing with a lot of different things, a lot of different emotions. And I didn't want to feel the uncomfort of being in someone else's house, under someone, you know, just being under their house. Can I use this? Can I use that type of thing? Like, I just wanted to be in the comfort of my own home. And I just remember it was the weekend of the jazz festival. It was the weekend of the jazz festival in Jacksonville. And I remember I stayed at a friend's house for the first few nights. And then the next few nights I stayed with my aunt and we went to the jazz festival. And I just remember, like, I was surrounded by so many people and I was just trying to, you know, keep it calm. I was trying to keep it cool. I was trying to keep it collected. But I was really having, like, a nervous breakdown, like, the whole time. Like, I was so anxious. I was anxious the entire weekend. Like, I could barely breathe. Like, I could feel myself breathing. Like, every breath, I thought about every single breath that I was taking. I was thinking about my breath, breathing. Like, I had to remind myself, Iman, breathe. It got to the point where I think, like, Saturday or Sunday night, I remember I just called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I cannot breathe. Like, I remember calling him on the phone and being like, Dad, I cannot breathe. Like, every breath is like, I'm thinking about every single breath. I'm processing every single breath. Like, I'm just remember, like, my anxiety was through the roof. Like, just the transition of coming out of the hospital and then being home for a little bit, and then my parents are like, you know, we have to go out of town, and just trying to make that adjustment. Everything was still really out of the water. Like, I was still very stressed and still very anxious and still having a lot going on. And I just remember, like, that feeling, like, I can't breathe. And that really went on through the whole weekend. My anxiety was just through the roof that whole weekend, just trying to adjust to everything and adjusting to taking the antidepressants again, and trying to, you know, adjusting to basically my life after, you know, the overdose. And for that PHP program, whenever you are, in order for you to be released from the PHP program, you also have to show that you have a follow-up plan from there. So I also had to find a therapist, and I had to find a psychiatrist that would, you know, continue to be able to prescribe me those meds and the antidepressants. So once I left the PHP program, I did show her that, you know, I have a therapist lined up and a psychiatrist lined up, and basically let them know that, hey, I have a plan for after I leave the PHP program. So in the next few videos, I'm going to even talk about more about the medication, how once I went full on the medication, basically the symptoms that I experienced when I started to notice that the antidepressants were working, basically my adjustment with that, me trying to figure out what antidepressant was best. I'll get into all of that on the next video. You don't want to miss me talking about that. Just continue to stay tuned. If you haven't already, make sure that you like this video. You want to subscribe to my channel, and definitely share this if you haven't. Make sure you comment as well. I do read the comments and I enjoy the comments. I've already gotten so much great news about this channel, and just so much encouragement for me to keep going, and people just telling me that this is helping them. So I'm so grateful for that news. If you haven't, just make sure you do like, subscribe, and you guys just have a great day, and thank you so much for supporting me.